Hello, football fans, and welcome back to Road to the Big Game, where we cover both teams headed to a given Super Bowl destination. This is part 2 of our journey to the game it is, Super Bowl 37. The date, January 26, 2003. The place, Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, California, in front of a packed house of 67,603 fans on a beautiful day. The teams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team with a complicated history of loserdom, who in the late 90s have actually come together to build one of the most dangerous defenses of their time, and a so-so offense, but at long last, are making it to the dance for the first time. And the Oakland Raiders, a team that has one of the most craziest histories of all time, but are also one of the league's most consistently popular teams, with a high-octane offense, and with one of the most dangerous passing games seen in this era. And also a defense that in itself is quite excellent. And making their first Super Bowl appearance since the 1983 season. And 5th appearance in the history of the big game. In part 1, we cover the Bucs. Now here in part 2, we will cover the Oakland Raiders. And it is indeed time for another backstory. The Oakland Raiders, or whatever city they may be in on a given day. Has there ever been a team with a history quite like theirs? Massive highs of success, ridiculous lows of failures, iconic players, coaches, many who have changed the way the game is played. Also, has there ever been a team with a more controversial history? Well, okay, you could argue the Dallas Cowboys are up there, but make no mistake about it, the silver and black give them a great run for their money. They also became quite a bit of a fashion trend in sports apparel in the late 80s and early 90s, especially throughout North America. But let's go back to the beginning briefly. If you watched my video on Super Bowl 9, specifically the one covering the Minnesota Vikings, you know that Minnesota was initially awarded an AFL franchise for their inaugural season in 1960. But when the NFL decided they wanted a team in that market, the AFL were scrambling to find a new spot. So they chose Oakland, despite no offers in the city or any owners. And indeed, they had nobody running it until Chet Soda stepped in, and later joining him was F. Wayne Valley. By 1961, Soda was out. Valley was sole owner. The Raiders were not a very good team until their 4th season when they hired a new coach and general manager. He's a fella by the name of Al Davis. Nobody knew at the time that this man would become one of the most historic and controversial figures in pro football history. He had been involved in coaching since the age of 21, beginning his career at Adelphi University in 1950 as an offensive line coach. After 2 seasons there and a year off, he took a job as head coach at Fort Belvoir, an Army installation who had a football program. And then he became a scout in 1954 for the Baltimore Colts, making his first job in the pros. He then returned to the college ranks as an offensive line coach for Citadel Bulldogs in 1955 and 56, and took the same position at USC for 3 seasons from 57 to 59. And again, he returned back to the pros, taking a job with the Chargers of the AFL as their wide receivers coach from 1960 to 62, where they actually made the AFL championship in the league's first 2 seasons in 60 and 61. Davis had a winning attitude, a charismatic personality, and of course many eccentricities. And because of him, the Raiders suddenly became a very good team in 1963, going 10-4, Davis winning AFL's Coach of the Year. But they couldn't build on that momentum the next couple seasons. Davis was actually named AFL Commissioner in 1966, but the title was short-lived for him with the impending merger with the NFL. He returned to the Raiders only this time as part owner, joining Valley as well as Ed McGaugh. In 1967, the Raiders won the AFL Championship for the first time and made it to the 2nd annual NFL vs. AFL Championship game, which of course we know now as the Super Bowl. But they were crushed by the Packers. The following year, Davis regained his role as general manager, and they made the AFL Championship 2 years in a row in a losing cause. The latter of which featured the AFL Coach of the Year, John Madden. And with the Raiders about to merge into the NFL with the rest of the league, the John Madden era is officially here. This era was what turned the Raiders into a juggernaut, ingrained in football culture. Al Davis also became sole owner in 1972, and the partnership between he and Madden was a very tight-knit one, despite Davis beginning to be the biggest headache for league commissioner Pete Rozelle. but it was what built them into something extraordinary. A strong, intimidating bunch that represented hard work, aggression, trash talk, and hey, let's face it, sometimes being outright dirty. And above all, just win, baby. During Madden's run as head coach in 10 seasons, they only missed the playoffs twice, and he never once had a losing record, even when they did miss the playoffs. However, they got the label as chokers, as in 3 straight seasons from 1973 to 75, they lost the AFC Championship twice to the eventual champions and newly hated rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that all changed in 1976 as the bad guys won. Not only did they finally beat the Steelers in the conference game, but won the Super Bowl, crushing perennial Super Bowl losers, the Minnesota Vikings. 9 Hall of Fame players were part of this Raiders team. The smart offense led by quarterback Ken Stabler, receivers Fred Biletnikoff and Cliff Branch, tight end Dave Casper, and 2 men who set a whole new standard for offensive linemen, Gene Upshaw and Art Shell. On defense, you had a nasty bunch, a lot of fan favorites, headed up by Ted Hendricks at linebacker and cornerback Willie Brown. And capping it off, punter Ray Guy, best punter in the game. But just before the 1979 season began, due to burnout and an ulcer, John Madden never coached again in the NFL. I heard he did pretty well for himself afterwards. After Madden's departure, longtime Raiders receivers coach Tom Flores took over the head coaching duties. But Al Davis is becoming a pain in the butt to the league, the team, and the fans, as he wanted to move the team to Los Angeles. Despite the drama behind the scenes, Flores led the Raiders to an unexpected Super Bowl win in the 1980 season, upsetting the Philadelphia Eagles 27-10 in Super Bowl 15. Branch, Hendricks, Guy, Shell, and Upshaw remained from that original Super Bowl IX club, and stars such as defensive back Lester Hayes and a quarterback who had been written off as a bust, Jim Plunkett, led them to victory. But the Raiders suffered their first losing season since 1964, when they went 7-9 in 1981. But then they moved to Los Angeles, and I guess that gave them a shot in the arm because they were back to form by 1982, the following year having an excellent season. And then 1983, they won another Super Bowl, their first in LA, stunning and dominating the favored Washington Redskins. Plunkett, Hayes, Branch, Hendricks, and Guy were back for that one as well, but it was future Hall of Fame running back Marcus Allen who stole the show. He also had future Hall of Famers on defense, such as Howie Long at defensive end and defensive back Mike Haynes. After making the playoffs the next 2 seasons, something happened. The Raiders began to crumble. After missing the playoffs 2 years in a row, Flores was dismissed as head coach after the 1987 season. Also, the Raiders weren't drafting well, and Davis was getting the blame. They took a total first-round bust in offensive tackle John Clay when Bruce Armstrong and Harris Barton were still available. In 1987, that is. But in 1988, Davis actually made a great call. 6th overall in the 1988 draft, the Raiders took wide receiver out of Notre Dame, Tim Brown. 1987 Heisman Trophy winner, is the best college football player in all of America. Elite speed, expert hands, tremendous timing, a perfect route runner, superb playmaker, can fool cover men, amazing at breaking tackles, untouchable at the long ball, quick on the short pattern as well. He was everything you wanted in a receiver. In 4 seasons with the Fighting Irish, he racked up 2,493 yards receiving on 137 catches, averaging a big 18.2 yards a catch, and scoring 12 touchdowns. He also racked up 1,613 kick return yards and 476 punt return yards. He really could do it all. In his senior year in 1987, he had 846 yards receiving on 39 catches, a massive 21.7 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns, also adding 456 kick return yards and 401 punt return yards. Wow. In addition to this Heisman Trophy, he won 3 more Player of the Year awards from the Walter Camp Foundation, as well as the Sporting News Player of the Year and United Press International Player of the Year. A unanimous All-American to boot, and even the year before was a first-team All-American in 1986. Great pick by the Raiders. But in 1988 and 89, the Raiders missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, bringing their streak to 4 straight without one. Just weird for them. However, they did have a rebound year in 1990 under coach Art Shell and sensation at running back Bo Jackson. Remember part 1, how I talked about Tampa screwed up with him? Yeah, this is where he ended up. The Raiders went 12-4, won the AFC West, but Jackson suffered an injury that would end his football career during a playoff win against the Bengals. Then they were utterly bitch-slapped by the Bills in the AFC Championship 51-3. The Raiders, however, at the 1991 draft picked quarterback Todd Marinovich over Brett Favre. However, this season they did still slip into the playoffs with a 9-7 record in 1991, but lost to the Chiefs in the wildcard round. And players like Howie Long were still producing, as was defensive back Ronnie Lott, a superstar for a decade in San Francisco. But QBs were never consistent or all that great. And after a bad 1992 season, they lost Ronnie Lott. They did rebound in 1993, however, with a big 10-6 record and won a wildcard round, toppling the Broncos, but lost to eventual Super Bowl finalist, the Bills. And guess what? Davis wanted to move the team back to Oakland. Are you kidding me? Okay, all right. Granted, I'll play devil's advocate on this one. Davis's frustrations over the lack of promises to renovate the stadium and add luxury boxes were actually quite valid. But there are also others that saw this as just bitter greed. But since Davis kind of made the mistake of moving into a stadium with an utterly insane capacity, lack of filling the stadium prompted TV blackouts, meaning less ad revenue. LA fans were furious with a gall at Davis and his attitude towards them. As the team, despite not filling the stadium, the fans were very much there, and it's not like they were on the verge of collapsing. But the city of Oakland was making big promises to Davis, too, with their upcoming renovations. Also to mention, the Raiders were still a merchandising juggernaut, including gear from company Starter. It was off the charts. They were one of the top 5 merch sellers in the league year after year. Their influence in hip-hop and urban culture in California was ridiculously popular. And it spread out not just across the country, but into Canada and other regions. Either way, the 1994 season will be the last in Los Angeles. And in that season, LA, and the Raiders finished 9-7, but missed the playoffs. A very kind of mid-team, to say the least, while definitely not bad or awful, whatever, with a 19th ranked offense and an 18th ranked defense. Tim Brown, however, had an epic year, career-high 1,309 yards receiving. It was 4th best in the league in his second straight 1,000-yard season. His 89 receptions were 7th best, and he led the entire NFL with 487 punt return yards. He actually garnered his 4th Pro Bowl selection. They did have a very talented quarterback at last in Jeff Hostetler, who was 9th in passing yards and 8th in touchdown passes, and garnered his very first Pro Bowl selection of his long career. And they did have a really good defensive tackle in Chester McLaughlin. But Art Shell's days as head coach are done, as the team gets ready to move back to their original home. At the 1995 draft, the Raiders took running back Napoleon Kaufman in the first round, but their second round pick of 49th overall was offensive lineman at center Barrett Robbins out of TCU. With the impending retirement of Pro Bowl center Don Mosbar coming after next season, this was a good pick for the Raiders. At 6'3", 320 pounds, he definitely had the size. He was quick off the snap and a quick thinker to boot. He had tremendous agility to make pushes and blocks against the toughest defensive linemen. He was first team All-SWC in his senior year of 1994. And in the 1995 season back in Oakland, the Raiders started 8-2 under new coach Mike White. And then went on a 6-game losing streak to end the season and finished 8-8. The Raiders had a so-so offense again. Tim Brown again was the highlight. His 8th best in yards receiving and made his 5th Pro Bowl. Running back Harvey Williams had 1,114 rushing yards, which was 10th best. Hostetler battled injuries and inconsistent play at QB. Offensive lineman Steve Wisniewski made the Pro Bowl for the 6th straight season. Their defense was really good this year, coming in 10th. Chester McLaughlin, again at defensive tackle, was a first-team All-Pro. And cornerback Terry McDaniel had 6 interceptions and was a second-team All-Pro for a 3rd time. But this is a huge disappointment. They're welcome back to the Bay Area regardless. In the offseason, they looked to strengthen what is already a pretty good offensive line and added offensive tackle Lincoln Kennedy, who was a 9th overall pick for the Atlanta Falcons in 1993. He made the NFL All-Rookie team in 93 and at a towering 6'6" and 330 pounds. He was like a brick wall made of steel. He had been an asset to the Falcons' offensive line, which sadly just wasn't a complete core. His ferocity allowed him to go toe-to-toe with anyone trying to rush his quarterbacks or running backs. He'll be key for the Raiders going forward. But the 1996 season didn't go well. The Raiders missed the playoffs again, ending the very short-lived Mike White era as they finished 7-9. Crazy, they had potential, just not the ability to win. Their offense was ranked a decent 12th, and their defense was 9th. And again, Hostetler missed 3 games. That proved costly, and that brings his time as a Raider to an end. Tim Brown again is the man. Another 1,000-yard receiving season and another Pro Bowl. Napoleon Coppin was their top runner with 874 yards rushing. And Steve Wisniewski's Pro Bowl streak came to an end, but he was still second-team All-Pro. Chester McLaughlin again, Pro Bowler, second-team All-Pro. Jerry McDaniel, 5 picks, 5th straight Pro Bowl. In the 1997 draft in the offseason, they picked defensive tackle Darrell Russell. But the 1997 season, they sunk even lower, finishing an awful 4-12. But the other thing is, their new quarterback, another Jeff George, actually played very well. What? I'm serious. Anyway, sadly, however, despite his good play, where he led the league in passing yards, was second in passing touchdowns and 7th in completions, tied with the 4th best passer rating, the Raiders' offense was still a so-so 17th overall. Tim Brown was the biggest highlight, however, 1,408 yards, a career high. Second best in the league, his 104 receptions were the best in the league. First team All-Pro for the second time in his career, first since his rookie year. Cobbin had 1,294 yards rushing, 6th best in the league. Wisniewski made the Pro Bowl again, and the defense, however, plummeted to 3rd worst. That was their ultimate undoing. McLaughlin made a Pro Bowl, however, once again for the 4th straight season, but this is his last season as a Raider. He moves on to the Chiefs in '98, and McDaniel would be released as injuries were starting to catch up to him. It was also the first and only season for head coach Joe Bugel in Oakland. In the 1998 draft, a very frustrated Al Davis had to make a splash. But he went into this one playing it very smart, as they had 2 first-round picks in this one. He can't squander these. So to start the first round, 4th overall, they took cornerback Charles Woodson out of Michigan. Mr. Heisman 1997, indeed, the Heisman Trophy winner as the best college player in America. A versatile player with great speed, exceptional coverage skills, tackling, blitzing, making monster plays, tremendous athletic prowess. He could work man-to-man, zone, just had incredible instincts, and also heart and leadership. In 3 seasons with the Wolverines, he garnered a huge 16 interceptions. In his senior year, he garnered 7. He would also play the other side of the ball with 231 yards receiving. Was a very good punt returner with 283 yards both in his final season. He led the Wolverines to the national championship title in 1997 after the big win in the Rose Bowl. And oh, so many accolades more. He won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy as best college player, voted by the Football Writers Association of America. He took home the Walter Camp Award and Sporting News Player of the Year award, also much like new teammate former Heisman winner Tim Brown did a decade earlier. The Chuck Bednarik Award for Defensive Player of the Year from the Maxwell Football Club. The Jim Thorpe Award as Best Defensive Back, voted by the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. Also the Jack Tatum Trophy for Best Defensive Back, and the Chick Harley Trophy as Best Defensive Player, voted by the Touchdown Club of Columbus. Big Ten Male Athlete of the Year, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Big Ten MVP. And even back in his freshman year in 1995, he won Big Ten Co-Freshman of the Year. 3-time All Big Ten, 3 years in a row, 95, 96, 97, every year he played. In 1996, he was a first-team All-American. In his monster 1997 year, well, you're not surprised, he was a unanimous All-American. Wow. The Raiders chose the right guy. Later in the first round, they took guard Mo Collins out of the Florida Gators. The Raiders missed the playoffs again in 1998 with their 5th straight season, but they did improve to 8-8 under new head coach John Gruden. Anyway, their offense still wasn't great, 22nd. Their QB situation was a mess. George wasn't playing well. He was also getting hurt. And Hollis and Wilson were also pretty bad. And injuries were a factor with them as well. Despite this, Tim Brown barely made it to his 5th straight 1,000-yard receiving season. Cobbin just fell short of 1,000 yards, rushing with 921, but he did miss 3 games. And the defense still wasn't great, but improved to 20th thanks to a great year, thanks to sophomore and first-team All-Pro defensive tackle Darrell Russell. He had 10 sacks, 64 tackles, 3 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. And rookie Charles Woodson had 5 picks, 64 tackles as well, and 2 forced fumbles, and a Pro Bowl selection. Not a bad way to start. After adding more depth to their offensive line, drafting Georgia's Matt Stinchcomb in the first round of the 1999 draft, They made 2 picks in the 5th round. The first was 146th overall, linebacker of Maryland, Eric Barton. 6'2", 245 pounds, 100 tackles in each of the years he's played, including 159 in his senior season, and was first-team All-ACC as well in '98. Hard hitter, plays with heart, can punch anyone that crosses with his path. This is a solid pick for Oakland. 7 picks later, they took defensive lineman Roderick Coleman, out of East Carolina. 6'2", close to 300 pounds. His ability to power through big offensive linemen to put pressure on opposing QBs could definitely be a big asset to the Raiders, as he is the all-time leader in East Carolina for sacks in a career, single season, and 1 game even. Then they built their offensive line even further, taking undrafted offensive tackle Barry Sims out of Utah, 6'5", 300 pounds, and wasn't really on anybody's radar. But the Raiders see something in him, as he is another lineman who could stop the fastest defensive players in their tracks and protect his QBs and running backs. Bit of a steal here, I'd say. And now they're going to add to their backfield. They acquired New York Giants running back Tyrone Wheatley, first-round pick of the Giants in 1995. His career had not at all panned out like they'd hoped. In 4 seasons, he's only rushed for 1,280 yards, 3.6 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. He's coming off a season where he's on the inactive list most of the time with 52 yards on 14 carries, 3.8 yards a carry in just 5 games. But his career at this point was still salvageable. But now they need to solve their quarterback situation. And they found him in free agent Rich Gannon. Needless to say, I don't think Raiders fans were necessarily angry, but they definitely hung their heads saying, "Why, Al? Why?" Veteran of 12 seasons, fans never dared call Gannon a has-been. Oh no. To some Raiders fans who responded to this, he was a never was. But hey, the world needs ditch diggers too, and like football needs backup quarterbacks. Only Gannon was vying for the starting quarterback position, which scared a lot of people. Indeed, selected by the New England Patriots in the 4th round of the 1987 draft, he never played a single game for them. He tried out for the Vikings, made the team. He played 7 games over the course of 3 seasons. Then he became the starter in 1990, and he was so I suppose. He'd actually be their top quarterback for 3 seasons, but after 1992, and a playoff appearance with some decent numbers and a passable touchdowns to interceptions ratio, he then went to the Redskins in 1993, hoping to be the starter there. Injury problems hit, and he still wasn't actually playing well in the games he did play. So after missing the entire 1994 season due to injury, he went to the Chiefs in 1995, where he has spent the last 4 seasons, mainly as a backup. In his career at this point, however, he has thrown for 11,958 yards, 66 touchdowns, 54 picks, a dead even 1,000 completions, 56.9 completion percentage, and a 75.6 passer rating. But hey, as a starter, he's actually an okay 31-27. He's coming off one of the better seasons of his career. He was the Chiefs' main starter in 1998. 12 games with them, he threw for a career best 2,305 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 206 completions, and a 59 dead even completion percentage, and an 80.1 passer rating. So, will this mean anything to the Raiders in 1999 with this nearly 34-year-old quarterback? Yes and no. They still finished 8-8 and still hadn't made the playoffs since moving back to Oakland. However, the Raiders' offense improved heavily to 9th because Gannon shut his naysayers up emphatically. With a huge season, he became the unlikely superstar. Career highs across the board in every category. 7th in the entire league in passing yards. Tied for 4th in touchdown passes. 7th in completions. And 6th in passer rating. Wow. And also, his very first Pro Bowl selection. Needless to say, Raiders fans changed their tune as Gannon's jersey was flying off the hangers. And hey, Tim Brown, still a model of consistency and one of the best receivers in the league. 1,344 yards receiving, that is, 5th best. And tied for 4th in receptions with 90. Another Pro Bowl. Tyrone Wheatley also became a star at last. His best season to date, 936 yards rushing, while Kaufman added 714 as they combined for 1,650 yards. Their defense showed slight improvement, moving to 16th. Darrell Russell, defensive tackle, 10 sacks, 45 tackles, 2nd team All-Pro, 2nd straight Pro Bowl. Charles Woodson, 1st team All-Pro, became a true elite defensive back. It was clear the defense still might need improving, but the offensive attack with Gannon is a really thing to build their strategy on, and they have a good backfield. We'll see if they can do that even more so as we get ready for the new millennium. The Raiders were going to be busy in the offseason. They needed to reinvigorate their special teams unit as well, and they started kicker. 17th overall in the first round, they picked Sebastian Janikowski, who became the first kicker since 1966 to be taken in the first round. But it's easy to see why. He was a force at Florida State in 3 seasons. He booted 324 kicking points with a 79.5% field goal percentage. He also helped his club to the BCS National Championship. He is the first and to date the only back-to-back winner of the Lou Grosso Award for Best College Place Kicker, doing so in 98 and 99. Not to mention unanimous All-American in 1999, consensus All-American in 98, back-to-back first-team All-ACC in 98 and 99. He was a second-team selection in 97. In his big final season, he put up 116 points and a 76.7 field goal percentage. In the second round, 47th overall, they added Jerry Porter, receiver out of West Virginia. He was called Superman because he could play all positions: QB, the backfield, receiver, defensive end, defensive back. But for the Raiders, he will be indeed part of the receiving corps. As he had 467 yards at Virginia, he also added 6 interceptions. Came in on blocking plays on offense in the backfield and short yardage plays, and added 170 yards on kick returns. And it was back to special teams in the 5th round, 142nd overall. They drafted punter out of Texas A&M, Shane Leckler. Pinpoint accuracy, very strong leg, master of field position management. In 4 seasons with the Aggies, he had 44.7 yards per punt average and booted just shy of 12,000 yards with 11,977. In his senior season, he averaged 46.5 yards per punt and booted 2,787 yards total. 2-time first-team All-American in 98 and 99. In his sophomore year, he was second-team All-American in 1997. And for 3 straight seasons from 97 to 99, first-team All-Big 12 selection. Great move here by the Raiders. They also took undrafted special teams returner Marcus Knight out of Michigan, who despite putting up great numbers was overlooked. He had tremendous speed, but some felt he was underweight in terms of his stature, barely 180 pounds. However, the Raiders are going to give him a chance down the road. He totaled 1,433 yards receiving, 766 in his final year, 81 receptions, 39 in 1999. His overall total was 17.7 yards per catch, with a massive 21.3 in his final season. 8 total touchdowns, 6 of which coming in his final season, 192 career punt return yards in college, and was second-team All-Big 10 in 1999. But the Raiders still weren't done, adding to their defensive backcourt this time, obtaining cornerback Torrey James from the Denver Broncos. Beginning his career in 1996, he showed some potential in his rookie year, but he missed the entire 1997 season due to injury, and thus missed out on a Super Bowl. But he got one with the Broncos the next year in 98, but he didn't break out until the 99 season, with 5 interceptions and 36 tackles. Overall in Denver, he had 7 picks, 70 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. He had really good field instincts and tremendous speed, and could also create turnover opportunities. They'd also add 4-year Tennessee Titans defensive back Anthony Dorsett. So can the Raiders reach the next level in the year 2000? Hell yes, they do! They finish with a 12-4 record and win the AFC West for the first time since 1990, making their first playoff appearance since 1993 and first since moving back to Oakland. They had the 3rd best offense in the league. Gannon had another great year, 10th in passing yards, tied for 4th in touchdown passes, 7th in passer rating, and in addition to his 2nd straight Pro Bowl, for the first time in his career, was named a first-team All-Pro. Tim Brown, another 1,000-yard season. Tyrone Wheatley, his first 1,000-yard rushing season with 1,046. It would, however, be the last season for Napoleon Kaufman. Lincoln Kennedy garnered his first Pro Bowl selection. Steve Wisniewski garnered his 8th and final, as the Raiders were tied for the 5th least sacks given up. The defense made a huge improvement to number 9, as the Raiders did garner the 11th most sacks in the league, thanks to Grady Jackson, Regan Upshaw, Rod Coleman, Tony Bryant, and of course, Darrell Russell. But it was Charles Woodson who again stole the show on defense. 4 picks, 3 forced fumbles, fumble recovery, 79 tackles, and another Pro Bowl, and a second-team All-Pro. The Raiders then defeated and dominated the Miami Dolphins at home in the divisional round, 27-0. But the historic defense that the Baltimore Ravens could not just be overcome by Gannon and company, and the Raiders lost the AFC Championship, their first appearance in that game since 1990. They would lose 16-3. Either way, Gruden and Davis have built something great here, and there's no doubt the Raiders can build on this further. The Raiders in the first round of the 2001 draft took defensive back Derek Gibson out of Florida State. First team All-ACC in 2000, second team in 99, and in the third round, added DeLawrence Grant out of Oregon State, a defensive end / outside linebacker. First team All-Pac-10 in 2000, which they hope both of these picks will add further depth in their defensive core in the future. Gruden felt the offense was almost complete, but the defense still needed a little more structure. They did add an offensive lineman in the offseason, guard Frank Middleton, who has spent all 4 seasons of his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A third-round pick for the Bucs in 1997, played in their comeback season in 1997, became starter by 98, and started every game from there to 2000. At 6'3", 300 pounds, he was an excellent member of the Bucs offensive line and very underrated. He helped carry his share of the load, and were top 10 at least sacks given up twice in the 4 seasons he played there. A strong addition to the Raiders. They added a new tight end in Roland Williams, who is primarily known for his tremendous blocking skills and short pass catches in short yardage situations. He's spent all 3 seasons of his career thus far with the St. Louis Rams, and he has a Super Bowl ring to show for it in the 1999 season, the Rams' epic win over the Titans in Super Bowl 34. He's accumulated 472 yards receiving, 51 catches, an average of 9.3 yards a catch, scored 10 touchdowns. At 6'5", 295 pounds, he'll add some substance. Then they added running back Charlie Garner for the 49ers, coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. In his only seasons with the 49ers, that is. His great speed, elusiveness, and a good little receiver, too. In his career, which began with 5 seasons with the Eagles from 94 to 98, he accumulated 4,632 yards rushing, 4.7 yards a carry, and 28 touchdowns. He added 1,744 yards receiving on 199 catches, averaging 8.8 yards a catch and 5 touchdowns. Despite being a good hand at Philly, it wasn't until his arrival in San Francisco, indeed, in 1999, where he emerged with 1,229 yards rushing. But in the 2000 season, he had 1,142 yards rushing, 4.4 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns, 647 yards receiving on 68 catches, 9.5 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. His 1,789 yards in a scrimmage was 6th best in the league, giving him his first Pro Bowl selection. Thing is, though, Gruden, along with offensive coordinator Bill Callahan, wants to build the most dangerous passing attack in the league. Well, I mean, Gannon is certainly proving capable of throwing the ball. You have one of the all-time greats at receiver in Tim Brown already, who still produces heavily. Garner will certainly help with his patterns. I mean, what else can they possibly do? Get the best receiver of all time? I'd like to see that. What? Yes, the Raiders did just that. Al Davis got his checkbook out and signed the San Francisco treat, Jerry Rice. Yes, the 16-season veteran who has spent all his career with the 49ers is indeed the NFL's all-time receiving leader with 19,247 yards in receiving. The all-time receptions leader with 1,281 catches. A career 15 yards per catch. The NFL's all-time receiving touchdowns leader and overall touchdowns leader in general with 176. 3-time Super Bowl champion, winning 23, 24, and 29 MVP. Super Bowl 23 in the 1988 season. NFL Offensive Player of the Year twice, 1987 and 1993. 10-time first-team All-Pro, 5 straight times from 86 to 90, another 5 straight times from 92 to 96. 12-time Pro Bowl selection, 11 straight times from 1986 to 96, and in 1998, 6 times he has led the NFL in receiving yards, 86, 89, and 90, and 3 straight times from 93 to 95. 6 times he led in touchdown catches, 86, 87, 3 straight times from 89 to 91, and 93. And he led the league in receptions twice in 1990 and 96. He had, counted up, 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons from 1986 to 96, but what derailed it was an injury season in 1997 where he only played 2 games. But he got his 12,000-yard season in 1998. And we mentioned his 3 Super Bowl wins and MVP. In the playoffs, he has 1,811 yards in 23 playoff games, 124 receptions, 14.6 yards a catch, and 19 touchdowns. And in the yards, 512 of those alone were in the 3 Super Bowls. That's insane. Name to the All-1980s team, the All-1990s team for the NFL, and the NFL's 75th anniversary team. But in the last couple seasons, San Fran has been pretty bad, finishing 4-12 and 6-10 respectively. Rice failed to reach 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons for the first time in his career. Well, I mean, that didn't mean he wasn't productive. In the 2000 season, he still caught for 805 yards on 75 catches, 10.7 yards a catch, and 7 touchdowns. At 38 years old, no less. But the fact needs to be addressed. He didn't have the same type of chemistry or communication with Pro Bowl QB Jeff Garcia that he did with, say, Joe Montana or Steve Young. And there was a new kid in town on receiver, T.O., Terrell Owens, who became all the rage in San Francisco. The team felt it was time for Jerry to leave, and he was released. Yes, the greatest receiver of all time. 49ers fans were pissed. They loved T.O., but felt Rice's loyalty wasn't really rewarded in kind, and the team didn't really handle his departure that well. But he now gets a second life with the Raiders. And while Raiders fans were excited, hey, his jersey was a big seller, there were skeptics across Oakland, amongst fans, media, and all around the NFL for that matter when it came to analysts. They had the oldest wideout duo in NFL history with Rice and Brown. Can the system work? Ha! It sure as hell did. This 2001 season, despite going 10-6 down from their 12 wins last year, they won the AFC West for the second straight time. Their offense was ranked 4th this season. Gannon was incredible again. Not only to get his 3rd straight Pro Bowl selection, yeah, I know. A guy who's been a backup most of his 13 seasons is the NFL's unlikely superstar, but he also was 5th in passing yards, 4th in passing touchdowns. He was second only behind Kurt Warner in the following categories: completions with 361, completion percentage, and passer rating. Wow. Tim Brown, 35 years old, 9th Pro Bowl, 9th consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season with 1,165 yards. And Jerry Rice? Yep, comeback season, 1,139 yards receiving, his 13th 1,000-yard season. Charlie Garner had 1,417 yards from scrimmage in his big first year at the Raiders. The Raiders' offensive line did their job as Lincoln Kennedy led a core that gave up the 7th least sacks and was selected as a second-team All-Pro. The defense slipped to 19th, but good old Chuck Woodson was a second-team All-Pro for the second time. Punter Shane Leckler made his first Pro Bowl and was a second-team All-Pro. He was also second in punting average. But the playoffs, due to being the lowest seeded team in terms of division winners, they had to play in the wildcard round, but they overcame the New York Jets at home 38-24. Gannon and Rice both played a beauty. But what happened in the divisional round when they faced the upstart New England Patriots is something Raiders fans hadn't forgotten and likely never will. The Raiders were leading 13-10 with under 2 minutes to play. Patriots rookie unknown quarterback Tom Brady took the snap. Charles Woodson, a former teammate of Brady's in college, got him! And he fumbles! Raiders linebacker Greg Bicker recovered it! The Raiders are headed to the AFC. Oh, wait a minute. They're going to a replay. Officials rule. Brady's arm was moving forward in a passing motion. So it's an incompletion? Oh, Gruden is losing his shit on the sidelines. So are the Raiders as a whole. You can actually hear the anger all the way back in Oakland. And the Pats sent it to overtime, and then they won it, 16-13. And they'd later win the Super Bowl. Needless to say, the fallout of this was epic in the media. Al Davis expressed monster anger, and allegedly, to some reports, took it out on Gruden, saying he didn't protest enough. It drove a wedge between the two that would not be repaired. Some dispute that Brady was about to tuck the ball, even to this day. Officials, however, have always stood by their decision. It was one of the most controversial games in NFL history, arguably the most heartbreaking loss in Raiders history. Something like this can destroy a team, no matter how good they are. But that wouldn't be the case necessarily. However, in the offseason, the Raiders, much like the Bucs, will have to deal with some departures. Greg Bickert, who'd been arguably the Raiders' best linebacker for a while now, after 8 seasons was headed to the Minnesota Vikings. Veteran offensive lineman guard Steve Wisniewski retired after 13 seasons. Darrell Russell failed the NFL substance abuse policy program and will miss the entire 2002 season. Talk about letting down your team. But of course, there was another departure. John Gruden will not be brought back as head coach. Despite turning the Raiders from zeros back to heroes, he leaves the team behind. It's one of the reasons, well, at least still to this day, is rumored that his alleged tenuous relationship with Davis is what ultimately was the final nail in the coffin. Fans weren't exactly happy about this decision, but hopefully he'll land somewhere. And that indeed does it for our look at the Oakland Raiders leading to the 2002 season and Super Bowl 37. Both teams, the Bucs and Raiders, will need new coaches, and they're going to need to make some more additions. We'll cover that in the third and final part of this series as we look at the two teams for that 2002 seasons, their draft picks, as well as others. We also look at their season in terms of games, their playoff run, and of course, the big game. Stay tuned for that one, but in the meantime, like and share the video, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I'll see ya.